has been duly approved. This meeting will be called to order. Please rise. And the national anthem will be sung by the Holbrook High School Chorus, and then let's get through let's have the national anthem first, and then let's remain standing for Let There Be Peace on Earth afterwards. Please remain standing. And two more things while we're still standing. The first will be a moment of silence, and the second will be an invocation by Pastor Timothy Rogers from St. Joseph's Church. So we'll start, St. John's Episcopal Church, I'm sorry, second mistake. Moment of silence for the following people. Elizabeth LeCount. She was an election worker in Teller for town meeting for many years. Paula Bostrom. She was the assistant town treasurer from 1987 through 1996. She was also on the Employees Insurance Advisory Committee from 88 to 89. She was a town meeting member. And also Paul Hernandez, school maintenance, election worker, industrial development committee, town meeting member, and great guy. So if you just take a moment of silence for those people. Thank you. And now, the invocation by Pastor Timothy Rogers from St. Joseph's Episcopal. I'm fired.
He's doing great, isn't he? He's doing great. For those who would like to join us in prayer, please join. Good and gracious and life-giving God, we give you thanks and we give you praise for this town of Holbrook. We thank you for gathering us here tonight to take counsel for all the work that you've given us to do as a people in this town. Give us the gift of your wisdom, give us patience, and give us love for each other, so that the work that is set before us may be done in love and for the betterment of the people in this community. We ask your blessing upon all of us, and especially those in this town that may not have enough to eat tonight or may not have a roof to sleep under. Watch over them and bless them, and may we change that reality. And we pray this in your most holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father. Okay, you may be seated. Before we begin, we'd like to recognize the following town meeting checkers and tellers: Maria Piccarelli, Barbara Jameson, Janet O'Neill, Marlene Sullivan, Sheila McInerney, and Denise Ryan. Thank you very much for helping us out. Now we will vote to allow non-town meeting members to speak if necessary, and that requires us to vote on that motion. They may speak, they may not, but it's just if they do speak, we don't have to do it each time. So I'll read the names off together. William J. Smith, Police Chief; Donald Colon, Library Director; Arthur P. Boyle Jr., Health Agent; Patrick Haring, Principal Assessor; Bethany Mosley, Town Accountant; Stephen Hook, Communications Director; Dr. Patricia Ray Lally, Superintendent of Schools; Adam Costa, Blattman, Bobrowski, Mead, and Tatterman; David DeLuca, and Brandon Moss, Town Council. All in favor? So carried. Also like to thank HCAM for being here and doing all the work, setting up with the microphones and all. What I'm told we are doing tonight is we've got a microphone here and then a microphone here. So if you are going to speak, just come on up, depending upon what side you're at. Or if you're in the back, and is it Peter? Peter's got a microphone here, so, and he looks like he's in good shape, so he can run around and deliver that to wherever it needs to go. So the people that are with HCAM are Zachary Gorman, B.J. Foley, Jenna Gagney, Dylan Carroll Brown, Bobby Belizos, Peter Harris, and Thomas Denny. So thank you for HCAM for being here. And the thing about also the microphones, a lot of times all of us in the meeting hall can hear one another, but maybe at home, if you're watching it on cable or a rerun, or those town meeting members who aren't here are watching, then you really need to speak into the microphone so they can hear, even though we may be able to hear. Let me see. I think I'll now turn it over to Tim Gordon.
Mr. Moderator, Article 1, I move that the town transfer the sum of $153,582 from free cash, said sum to be applied to the reduction of the fiscal year 2017 tax levy.
Then he steps in.
Got it.
Finance Committee recommends passage of this 7-0. If I may speak to this. On the back of you have the Finance Committee recommendation sheet. On the back of that sheet, there is the Finance Committee's free cash policy and a breakdown of this year's free cash. I'll try and be brief. The Finance Committee has 8 goals when it comes to free cash. One is to keep a minimum balance. 2 is to pay off all prior year deficits. 3 is to generate general stabilization fund equal to 10% of our operating budget. 4 is to maintain the capital stabilization to a balance of $400,000. 5 is to fully fund the OPEB liability in the OPEB trust fund. 6 is to fully match annually Chapter 90 funds, specifically for repairs and upgrades to roads and sidewalks. 7 is to fund unique one-time projects or initiatives that have no traditional funding source. And 8 is to decrease the tax levy. In any year when positive free cash is certified, $100,000 or 25%, whichever is greater of the amount certified, shall remain as free cash. Any remaining amount of free cash up to the total of prior year deficits not already funded shall be applied to offset those prior year deficits. Any further remaining free cash shall be applied to the stated goal as 50% allocated to general stabilization, 10% to the capital stabilization fund, 15% to OPEB trust fund, 5% to the roads and sidewalks maintenance and repair fund, 5% to unique initiatives, and 15% to reduce the ensuing year tax rate. Once the stated goal has been achieved, any free cash that would otherwise go toward that goal shall be added to goal 3. If that is fully funded, then those funds move to the next sequential goal up to goal 7. If all goals 3 to 7 have been attained, then the Finance Committee shall review and amend this policy. This year, we have a significant amount of free cash of $1.4 million. A lot of that is from tax title money that has come back, as well as turnbacks of departments that ran their budgets very well and were able to turn some money back into the town, which then generates free cash. So when we break that down, $362,000 under this policy would remain as free cash to help us next year make sure that we have a positive free cash. $62,598 in this town meeting warrant will go to pay off prior year deficits. And also just want to note that in the spring, we used already $382,000 of free cash at that point to pay off anticipated prior year deficits. So we will be using over $400,000 of free cash between the spring and now to pay those prior year deficits. And what that allows is for us to not have to go into the operating budget and take money away from the operating budget. It allows us to start off with a clean slate for FY17. So that left $1 million available for the other goals in our policy. $617,000 will be voted to go to, or there'll be a motion to move that to stabilization. Our capital stabilization, I'm glad to say, is already at our goal of $400,000. So at this point going forward, our goal will be to try to maintain that amount. OPEB will be another warrant article for $153,000. Roads and sidewalks at $51,000. Unique project, we'll get into that. I believe it's Article 23. It's for a unique project that doesn't have a traditional funding source. And then this article, which is to reduce the tax, this year's current taxes by $153,582. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And just on the Finance Committee recommendations, you may have got them as you were coming in. It's a sheet. Kevin just went through the free cash end of things. Rather than have a Finance Committee recommendation each article, I think it's best that we just show that it's majority or 7-0 on almost every one except one down at Article 23 and whatnot. So those are the recommendations of the Finance Committee. So unless you tell me otherwise, I won't ask you to come up each time for your recommendation because we pretty much have them here. Okay? So all those in favor of the motion made on Article 1? Mr. George? You want to come back here, Arthur?
I need to do it in writing. Can I borrow your?
Oh, sure.
I move the sum of $153,000 be amended to $150,000. The reason I'm doing that is, or asking for that amendment of the $3,000 is we later have a prior year fiscal bill, and rather than take it out of our budget, which is pretty strained, we'd like to take it out of the free cash.
Do I have a second on that motion? Does the Finance Committee want to talk on that? Okay, sure. And, yeah, just, you want to write it up. And that, while they're discussing that, if, like Arthur just did, if you want to make all these, what we basically have here is the articles and then motions on the articles, but those motions can be amended by us, the town meeting members. So if you wanted to make a motion to amend, then just let Jean know. She's got some paperwork here that you just need to put it in writing so that she can record it in case it passes, or doesn't.
The Finance Committee opposes this measurement 6-0. Number one, first point, this sets a very bad precedent of using free cash for operating budget. That is not the intent of the operating budget. As in the past, every year's prior year bill that came in, and we've never actually, the school committee never came to explain what the $3,000 was for and why it was an unpaid bill from a prior year. Our assumption is that it was just a bill that came in towards the end of the school year, and they didn't recognize it until after the books closed on July 15th. But that being said, typically what has happened is the existing department funds with their current operating budget those prior year deficits that come up. That's been the policy at town meetings since I've been at town meeting, that if you have that bill, you pay it with your own budget. And using free cash for operating budget is a bad precedent. Thank you.
So as I understand it, that's a $3,000 swing. Mr. George, you want to use, is it easier to use that one?
Bill from a prior fiscal year that came in late, so it wasn't in our contemplation of our operating budget for this year. And it's a $3,000 that was going for kids' instruction on special needs. So, I mean, I hope that the town will give us the $3,000 that we didn't anticipate.
And if I understand this correctly, it's just a matter of whether we pay it now out of this or we still have to pay it down the road, one way or another.
Well, correct. And there's a funding source identified within the article that.
Okay, so we either pay it now or later. All those in favor of Mr. George's, Mr. Fleming? And then PJ.
Just a question, I'm not really, this was for transportation, not for special needs. I don't think, it's not clear here. This was $3,000 for transportation out of an $875,000 yearly budget. That's what the transportation budget is on an annual basis. I don't know why they're coming back and looking for $3,000 out of $875K. And Work Inc. is a program that generally provides services to variety labor, public and private sector, but I don't generally remember, in my experience with Work Inc. and others, that we also pay, besides allocating the job, pay to transport those personnel from point A to point B. That's generally out of the Work Inc. budget itself. So I'm a little confused as to why this item was put in this way, and I hope somebody can clarify that for me, because right now I'm not in favor of it. Okay? Thank you.
Please, did you want to say something, PJ? That's okay. So Tim Gordon and then Arthur George.
So I just want to clarify. So the amendment, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Take this one, Tim.
All right. I'm not on here, guys. So I'm not on here. It must be me. All right. Okay, there we go. Are we okay? And we're not good there. Okay. So the just to explain what this amendment is doing, it's not an amendment to pay this particular transportation bill, even though that's the intent and I believe of the article for when we get to the future article, which is number 13. I think the intent is to change the funding source of that article to use free cash. So what the proposal is to reduce this $153,000 here to $150,000 in anticipation of that future article. The reason why that's important is because this article requires a simple majority, but that article is going to require 9/10 because it's a prior year bill. So.
And as I said before, this is not transportation. This is a software in the classroom that was used by special needs students. It is not transportation. So I hope that clarifies that.
Mr. Costa?
I guess I just want to, just again, a quick clarification. So this would reduce the reduction that we're trying to pass to reduce the taxes by that amount. So just to be clear, that's exactly what this would do.
P.J. Duggan?
That's an important point. Is that it's, but it does say in the article, quote unquote, transportation. So if it wasn't forward right, that's what it says. And the point we need to get at is we appreciate this for the SPED students. And we're not voting on whether who's this for, whatever else. We're voting on whether this payment should come from the free cash where we have a policy we've established. Because while it's only $3,000, I'm sure people know it's only $3,000. The next time it could be 10, next time it could be 15. And to the point made earlier, there's an $875,000 budget. They could absorb this now, pay the prior bill, and then at the end of the year, we can see if that $3,000 really has an effect. But to take the money out of free cash when a policy we've been working on for longer than I've been on the committee is in place, we really should stick with this and not make special exceptions just because either it's only $3,000 and not just because, we're not voting on whether it belongs to the SPED or not. We're voting on where it comes from.
So we will now vote on the motion made by Arthur George and opposed by the Finance Committee 6-0. All those in favor of Mr. George's motion, please raise your hands. All those opposed? That motion is defeated. We'll now go to the main motion. All those in favor of the motion on Article 1, please raise your hands. All those opposed? That's carried. Article 2.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer the sum of $88,768 from Water Enterprise Certified Retained Earnings, said sum to be added to the Water Enterprise account to reduce the increase in the water rates. Mr. Moderator, if I may, as everyone is aware, we had a recent water rate increase to cover some capital costs that we did throughout the town since 2015. The use of this $88,000 in certified retained earnings offsets the amount that we needed to raise through the rate increase. So it's about approximately $20 per household.
See no hands. All those, I'm sorry. And would you please identify yourself and your precinct number?
Yeah, Matt LaCourte, Precinct 4. You say $20 per household. Does that mean if we vote no on this, our bills go up another $20?
It means that if you vote no on this, we could potentially run into a deficit at the end of the year in the operating budget. We'd still have this money in the retained earnings. It's in the fund, but what we want to do is take it out of the retained earnings and move it into operations.
So this is on top of the already increase?
That's correct.
And that's recommended by the Finance Committee 7-0. All those in favor? All those opposed? So carried. Article 3.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer the sum of $60,788 from Solid Waste Enterprise Certified Retained Earnings, said sum to be added to the Solid Waste Enterprise account to reduce a deficit.
Do I hear a second? Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, so we have an FY17 budget deficit within our Solid Waste Enterprise Fund of $60,788. In order to close this deficit, we're proposing the use of retained earnings. We have $142,000 in retained earnings, and we'd like to use this $60,000 to close the deficit.
This is recommended by the Finance Committee, again, 7-0. All those in favor? All those opposed? So carried. Article 4.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer the sum of $57,205.69 from free cash, said sum to be used to pay the fiscal year 2015 snow and ice deficit. So if you recall, winter 2015 was a tough one, and the state allowed municipalities to amortize the snow and ice costs over a 3-year period. So we did that over a 2-year period. Now we have, for the most part, now there's still $57,000 remaining to be paid from that amortization. So this article pays those costs.
So this 57,000, I just want to give a great thanks to Richard Rouse, our emergency management coordinator, who worked diligently with FEMA to get a significant amount of grants and well, not grants, but reimbursement because of how bad that year was. A lot of volunteer hours and a lot of paperwork went into actually recouping a lot of money for our town. This 57,000 was submitted, and it was unfortunately rejected as part of that submission package. So that's why this wasn't accounted for before now.
Again, 7-0 is the recommendation of the Finance Committee. All those in favor? All those opposed? So carried. Article 5.
Mr. Moderator, just a note I'd like to make on Article 5 to Article 12. These are all correction of errors from the budget for fiscal year 17 and some adjustments for 16. This is a result of a lot of hard work, outstanding work by our finance department, and who identified and is making these recommendations. All of these actions that require town meeting approval before we can actually perform the adjusting entries have been reviewed and approved by the State Department of Revenue.
And
Sorry.
And I might add on that Articles 5 and 6 require a 9/10 majority, and Articles 7 through 12 just require a simple majority.
I'm not sure about that. Dave, because we're not funding the deficit.
Kevin, you can just give him that, so I'll show him what it is.
Yep. 9/10.
Okay. Okay, so 5 and 6 are going to require 9/10, and 7 through 12 will be a simple majority. Is there anything to be said on any of the articles, 5 through 12? Does any, I mean, it sounds like it's just basic cleanup housekeeping, right, Kevin? Okay, so then I am going to take 5 and 6 together because they require 9/10. All those in favor of the motions on 5 and 6?
I haven't read it.
Oh, we need to read it. Okay.
Okay.
Then
Okay.
let's read.
Mr. Moderator.
Oh, you know what? First of all, is that okay? Can we do that? You know, do you want to do that? Take 5 and 6 together, and we'll take 7 through 12 together? Is anybody opposed to that? All those in favor of that, please raise your hands. All those opposed? Great. So let's read the motions on 5 and 6,
at the same time.
please.
Okay. Article 5, I move that the town vote to transfer the sum of $646,724 from Water Enterprise Certified Retained Earnings, said sum to be transferred to account 2800359200, reserve fund balance, prior year deficit, in order to fund the FY 2016 deficit in water debt. Want me to go right to 6?
And now let's go right to 6.
Okay.
And now we'll go right to the motion on 6 before we vote.
I move that the town transfer the sum of $5,391.35 from free cash, said sum to offset an FY 2016 deficit in police salaries and various grants.
All those in favor of the motions on Article 5 and 6? All those opposed? That carries. Clearly by 9/10, I saw only one hand in opposition. And now, again, let's let Tim read 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Yeah. Please state your point of order, Mr. Duggan.
As printed in the warrant.
I'm reading the motion.
Is,
Okay, I-
is the motion similar? Is it the motion the same as what is
Yeah, it's
printed
just
in
that
the?
it has this. You can do that? As
Yeah.
printed? Okay.
Okay, so, great call. So basically, instead of making Tim read, you know, all of that, what we're saying is, all those in favor of the language contained in the warrant for Articles 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that hasn't changed, those are, what you see in the warrant is what we are voting on right now. This just requires a simple majority, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but again, the Finance Committee unanimous on all of this.
Correct.
Just want to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Correct.
Okay.
You need to make a motion to allow, to take them as printed in the warrant.
Could I get, so moved? Moved and seconded. So first, what we're doing is we're voting on a motion by Mr. Duggan to take those articles rather than reading, but as printed in the warrant. All those in favor? All those opposed? That passes unanimously. Now, all those in favor of the motions on Articles 7 through 12, right? Okay, please raise your hands. All those opposed? Again, unanimously. Great. So that brings us to Article 13.
You're making up for those earlier mistakes. Okay. Article 14,
13.
sorry, Article 13. I move that the town transfer the sum of $3,000 from the amount appropriated for the fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2017, under School Attendance Services 01331542000, School Admin Services Operating Expense, said sum to be used to pay Work Inc. for student transportation for the period of July 1st, 2015 through June 30th, 2016.
Mr. George.
I'd like to make an amendment by striking the words "for student transportation."
Okay, I'm going to ask you just to speak into the microphone, please.
The request for this warrant article was given on October 7th, 2016. It does not say in the request for student transportation. I don't know how it got in the warrant. We don't print the warrant, and we just missed the fact that it was in there. So I would ask that those words be deleted for student transportation.
So that's pretty basic. I don't think we need that in writing. We'd just be deleting the word student transportation if it passes.
Correct. And I just might reiterate again that we need a 9/10. It's a prior fiscal year bill. This was software for special needs students.
Okay, so the first motion is to strike two words, student transportation, from the motion in Article 13. That just requires a simple majority. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Now we'll go to the motion on Article 13 as amended by Mr. George. This is what requires a 9/10. Sue Wright? Where is the money coming from? Is the
Current year budget. Current year school budget.
all those in favor of that motion, please raise your hands. All those opposed? I see one in opposition, so that clearly carries by 9/10. Article 14.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $1,232.08, said sum to be used toward the applicant's share of the town of Holbrook's Assistance to Firefighters Grant Award for the procurement of 2 cardiac compression devices.
Second.
Mr. Moderator, our public safety fire chief and our dispatch and emergency managers put a lot of effort into getting grants. They've secured this grant, but it also includes a 5% town cost share, and this is the cost share to fund this grant.
This requires a simple majority and is recommended 7-0 by the Finance Committee. All those in favor? All those opposed? So carried unanimously. Article 15.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $6,607.92, said sum to be used toward the applicant's share of the Town of Holbrook's Assistance to Firefighter Grant Award for the procurement of self-contained breathing apparatus equipment. So, actually, this is the same grant as the previous, it's just different equipment, so it's the same 5% cost share that the town has to pay in order to receive the funding.
What are we on right now?
15.
So that requires also a simple majority and is recommended 7-0 by the Finance Committee. All those in favor? All those opposed? So carried unanimously. Article 16.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer the sum of $21,000 from the amount appropriated for fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2017, under the Reserve Fund 01-132-5781-000, said sum to be added to the existing amount already appropriated at the annual town meeting for the fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2017, under Fire Department 01-220-5830-000, replacement equipment. So, Mr. Moderator, this article will fund the purchase of 3 self-contained breathing apparatuses. The grant that we referred to in the prior article is funding 20 of them through the grant, but the need for the fire department is 23. So this makes up the difference in terms of what they need.
So we only have to pay for 3 out of those 23?
Yeah, plus the 5% cost share.
Nice. So that means we're actually paying for 3 out of the 23 plus the 5% cost share?
correct.
Okay. Recommended by the Finance Committee, 7-0. Simple majority required. All those in favor? All those opposed? So carried unanimously. Article 17.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, I move the town take no action on Article 17. This article, we're still in negotiations.
Seeing no hands, all those in favor of no action on Article 17? All those opposed? So carried unanimously. Article 18.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer the sum of $5,350 from the amount appropriated for the fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2017, under Other Insurance 01-945-5175-000, Workers' Comp Insurance, said sum to be used to pay Holbrook Insurance Center, Inc. for the premium on the Commercial General Liability Insurance Policy Number 3 EG 2885 on the town-owned property at 3 Phillips Road, effective September 16, 2016, September 16, 2017.
All those in favor of that motion, please raise your hands. All those opposed? So carried. 2 in opposition. Article 19.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer the sum of $2,671 from the amount appropriated for the fiscal year ending on June 30th, 2017, under Other Insurance, account 01-945-5175-000, Workers' Comp Insurance, said sum to be used to pay Gladfelter Public Practice for endorsement number 5, effective October 12th, 2016, on policy number BAP 906-347103, the town's business automobile insurance policy.
Recommended 7-0 by the Finance Committee again, and simple majority. All those in favor of the motion on Article 19? All those opposed? So carried unanimously. Article 20.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town take no action on Article 20. We're still in litigation on this item with Norfolk County.
Mr. George? The question is, how much has this cost us so far in litigation?
I don't have that number with me, but I'd be happy to send it out and disclose it at the next Board of Selectmen meeting.
Where the vote actually on the motion is just for no action. We can talk about that if that vote doesn't carry. But all those in favor of no action? All those opposed? So carried, no action on Article 20. Article 21.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to ask, is Mr. Adam Costa here? Okay, great. So, to the motion, I move that the town transfer the sum of $48,000 from free cash, said sum to be expended by the planning board in order to fund the services of a consultant to assist the planning board with a town-wide rezoning project.
Mr. Costa?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, town officials. The town administrator, Mr. Gordon, had asked me to be in attendance tonight to address the recodification, in part because recodification is a rather odd word, and many town officials, town meeting members have questions about what it means exactly to recodify a zoning ordinance or bylaw. My firm, and specifically my partner, Mark Bobrowski, who couldn't be in attendance tonight, we've recodified zoning bylaws and ordinances throughout Massachusetts in well over 100 communities. Recodification is a process that we recommend and most communities opt to undertake every few years. Some communities do it as frequently as every 10 years or so. Other communities do it far less frequently. In the case of Holbrook, your zoning bylaw hasn't been recodified in approximately 50 years. So the consequence of that is that the bylaw as a whole, although there have been piecemeal amendments made to it over the years from time to time, those amendments have never been reviewed on the whole to ensure internal consistency, not to mention that the bylaw hasn't been reviewed to ensure that it's up to date with current law in Massachusetts. Obviously, statutory changes occur from time to time. In addition to that, the case law changes from time to time as the courts decide cases under the Zoning Act. So the recodification process is a process that begins with a zoning diagnostic that my firm will prepare. We'll review your zoning bylaw as a whole. We'll point out deficiencies and prepare a memo with suggestions as to how it might best be recodified, reorganized, updated to be in compliance with current law, and even amended in certain ways to add certain provisions to it that might be appropriate, or to remove provisions from it that might not be appropriate. The second step would be that we'd have meetings with your zoning committee. These meetings would begin with segregating the various topics for subsequent meetings. We typically suggest there be at least a series of 4 meetings. One meeting to address general procedural issues as contained within the zoning bylaw. A second meeting to address issues like the definition section, which often needs to be updated, your use table, which we've given a quick review to your bylaw, and it certainly needs to be updated. And then we dedicate one meeting to residential issues and a second meeting to business issues. So with residential issues, we'd address everything from accessory uses to alternate development bylaws, home occupations, things of that sort. With the business issues, we'd address things like noise concerns, parkings, landscaping, signage, environmental hazards, things of that sort. Once we conduct those meetings, we then go back and prepare subsequent subsequent drafts of the zoning recodification. And these are done in a red line format so that the zoning committee and certainly members of the public, if they choose, can see what's being done from version to version, the changes that have been made. And then ultimately our goal is to end up with a much more organized, up-to-date version of the zoning bylaw. I think at first glance, and I've spoken to Attorney Bobrowski as early as today about his comments and his considerations upon quick review of your zoning bylaw. In most communities, and certainly in a community like Holbrook, your most frequent interaction with your bylaw, or residents' most frequent interaction with their bylaw, is the nonconformity section of the bylaw. When you've got a residence, a home that is not in compliance any longer with current zoning. It's existed for 50 or 100 years or more, but it doesn't comply with current zoning requirements. It's protected, it's grandfathered, but whenever you go to make a modification to that structure, you need certain relief under the zoning bylaw. And there's a process for obtaining that relief. And nonconformities and the law of nonconformities has changed significantly in the past 2 or 3 decades. Your zoning bylaw is very much out of date. The process is a tedious process for these amendments to be made, and so that's where we'd focus at least our initial efforts is in making certain suggestions to reworking that section of your bylaw to be in compliance with current law and to provide for a simpler process for residents who seek to make modifications, coming before a board and getting permission to do that. So that's the process in a nutshell. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions at the behest of the moderator. But again, the town administrator had asked me to be present tonight just to provide that quick overview to help you understand what exactly the funds are being requested for. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I just want to add that the Board of Selectmen fully support this article. The Planning Board supported it and voted 5-0 in favor of it.
Bill Forte.
Is this thing on? Hello. Oh, right there?
I think it,
Oh, it's already on. Okay, sorry. I don't know the sound of my own voice. William 40, Precinct 3. Just had a question regarding the new provisions of Chapter 40A, if these things are going to be considered in the rewrite of the town bylaw.
Adam want it.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, if I may.
Yes, you can just stay up here.
Thank you.
Done with all the
Thank you. So yes, certainly. Chapter 40A is known as the Zoning Act in Massachusetts. It's the enabling act that gives municipalities the right to adopt zoning bylaws and ordinances. Consists of 17 sections, addresses everything from variances to special permits. There have been a variety of modifications, amendments made to Chapter 40A over the past 20, 30 years. On the one hand, there's not been a zoning overhaul, which has been a topic of much discussion in the news, but there have been some recent amendments. In fact, this most recent session of the legislature amended a provision concerning special permits. So when we conduct our initial diagnostic review of your zoning bylaw, we would make recommendations to the extent that there are provisions of your existing bylaw that are out of date and no longer in compliance with Chapter 40A. We'd obviously recommend modification of those provisions to bring them into compliance with Chapter 40A.
And, Mr. Moderator, just one more question, if I may speak directly. These modifications to the zoning ordinance, will they anticipate any future changes that are possibly going to be passed by the Senate in the next coming months?
So what we always attempt to do when we recodify a zoning bylaw or ordinance is not reiterate the language of the zoning act. For example, with respect to variances, there's a three-part test you need to satisfy to obtain a variance. We don't reiterate that test, we simply make reference to it or incorporate it by reference. Insofar as the legislature makes changes in the future, your bylaw is not automatically outdated by virtue of you having repeated verbatim what was contained in the old zoning act. So that's what we try and do as much as we can. We certainly can't, our foresight's not 2020, so we don't know what's going to happen next session of the legislature or 5 or 10 years from now, but our obvious objective is to review the zoning bylaw, make modifications to it that are consistent with your home rule authority, pursuant to the home rule amendment, and where the statutes govern to reference the statutes and not to incorporate them verbatim.
And one final question, Mr. Moderator, if I may. Are you going to consider the new passing of the new marijuana legalization laws into the zoning ordinance?
Sure. So one of the things that will be considered, in addition to reviewing the existing zoning bylaw, suggesting reorganization of that bylaw, suggesting an updating of the bylaw, one thing that will be discussed with the zoning committee is whether there should be additional provisions added to the new zoning bylaw. That's a discretionary determination to be made by the town, and certainly not by any consultant that the town might hire to perform the recodification. So if you want items addressed, things like solar photovoltaic facilities or medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, how that would be addressed. Certainly we have a means of doing that. We've drafted those bylaws before for communities we represent. The question would be to the town whether it wants that to be something that it becomes a part of the recodified zoning bylaw.
This is all in the $48,000. Is that the beginning payment, or is that?
No, the $48,000, as I understand it, consists of two components. The first is the actual recodification. There's also a piece of that $48,000 that's dedicated solely to a map amendment, so updating the zoning map that accompanies a zoning bylaw. That's not something that my firm, if we were engaged to do the work, would complete. We'd outsource that to a second firm that would do the mapping. We don't do that in-house.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Mr. Gordon?
I just want to reiterate that we will be including, addressing the issue of having a marijuana district within this recodification.
So I'm a lawyer, and as eloquently as that was all said, if you're like me, I'm still not sure, so I always like to know that the planning board is 5-0 for this. The Finance Committee is 7-0 for this, and hope that they got all that. So thank you, Adam, for being here. Thank you for explaining all that. Simple majority required. All those in favor? All those opposed? That passes unanimously. Article 22.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town transfer the sum of $20,000 from the Capital Stabilization Fund, said sum to be used to complete the necessary repairs of the masonry on the northeast corner of the Town Hall and window replacement on the rear of Town Hall.
Second. Okay, first of all, I've been informed that on this article, and we're on Article 22, that the Finance Committee recommendation is not 7-0, it is 6-1. Also, on Article 22, and Attorney DeLuca, correct me if I'm wrong here, 2/3 is what's required on this.
It
That
is.
look right? Correct, okay. So 6-1, Finance Committee recommendation, 2/3. What else is to be said on this?
Hi, Matt LaCote, Precinct 4. Are we voting on a dollar amount that's already been bidded out, or
No, it's an estimate.
it's an
It's
estimate?
based on an estimate.
Okay, so this could balloon more than that?
No, I think it will probably be less than this.
And applying for a grant
Yeah,
for some of this?
So if you recall last year when we did all the work at Town Hall, it was a result of an earmark grant. We're very fortunate that our legislative delegation is able to secure that for us. If we get that grant this year, we will not use this $20,000 out of capital stabilization. We will use the grant to pay for this work.
Okay. All those in favor of that motion? All those opposed? So carried unanimously. Article 23.
Mr. Moderator, I move that we take no action on Article 23.
Second?
Mr. Moderator, so the initial intent of this article was to prohibit panhandling in town. However, there are statutory limits that prevent us from doing that, so this article does not, just doesn't meet the desired purpose and outcome that we're looking for.
Okay. And that's the public nuisance article.
It is, yes.
And that is, okay, so the motion, it really doesn't, does the Finance Committee want to talk on this? It's a 5-2, but it's a no action, right?
5-2, no action.
Yeah.
No discussion needed.
No discussion needed, I'm told. Okay. Unless somebody else wants to discuss it. All those in favor of that motion of no action? All those opposed? So carried unanimously. Article 24.
Now's the fun stuff. I move the town transfer the sum of $17,523.00 from free cash, said sum to be added to the stabilization fund as established in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5B. Mr. Moderator, so if you remember at the beginning of the evening, this is the result of free cash. Very glad to say that when I started on the Finance Committee 10 years ago, we had less than 0.5% in our general stabilization fund. Through the hard work of department heads, the Finance Committee, and town meeting, this now would put us over 6% in our general stabilization fund to our operating budget. So that's a good job by many, many people in town, as well as town meeting through the years.
All those in favor of the motion on Article 24? All those opposed? So carried unanimously. Article 25.
I move the town take no action on Article 25.
All those in favor of no action on 25? All those opposed? So carried unanimously. Article 26.
I move the town transfer the sum of $153,582.00 from free cash, said sum to be added to the other post-employment benefit, OPEB liability trust fund, as established in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 32B, Section 20, said sum to provide a funding source for the unfunded actuarial liability of retirees' health care and life insurance benefits.
Okay, so this is going to be the last article, but stick, a second, yep, okay. But stick around because after that article, Mr. Gordon wants to give everybody an update on the schools. Okay, so all those in favor of the motion on Article 26? All those opposed? So carried. Mr. Gordon?
Just real quickly, as you can see, you're in the building adjacent to it. The new school is coming along. It's on time. It's under budget. It's going to be closed in by winter. The Permanent School Building Committee is busy, picking out furniture and dealing with the IT needs. And it's just very exciting. And over the next 6 months, I suspect we'll have tours inside the school. And we will be opening in September for school. So we probably have one more town meeting in this building.
Yeah, great job. So, we've got a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All those in favor? This special town meeting is hereby adjourned. That motion is carried.